Now we're going to review several of the functions of the 10-key calculator. So let's talk about correcting errors. So if you're doing a problem and you pressed a wrong number key, as long as you've not pressed the plus for that number, there are two ways to make a correction. You can press the CE key, which stands for clear entry, and that will erase the whole number. Or you can press the arrow key to clear one digit at a time. Subtotals. So when you're adding and subtracting numbers, many calculators will show the subtotal on the screen, also known as the running total, but not on the tape. You can, if you want, print the subtotal on the tape without clearing the amount from the calculator. To do this, you'd press the subtotal key, which is the diamond shape on the far left part of your calculator. It's the pound symbol / diamond key when you're adding and subtracting. You can continue adding and subtracting just like normal. The diamond key just merely prints the subtotal on your tape. You can even press it multiple times and it won't disrupt your adding and subtracting. So let's do an example. Let's say you want to add 10 plus 5 plus 23 plus 40. And after entering the 23, you want to know the subtotal at that point and you want to print it on your tape. So here's how we're going to do that. Since we're adding and subtracting, you have to clear it first with an asterisk. We enter 10 plus, 5 plus, 23 plus, and now remember this is at the point where we want to print the running total, also called the subtotal, on our tape. To do that, you press the diamond key on your calculator. Again, it's the pound / diamond key. And it should print a subtotal of 38 on your tape, but we're not done adding, so we keep on going. And we hit 40 plus, and now we're done, so we hit asterisk to print the total on our tape. And you should get an answer of 78. And then if you look at your tape, after the 23 plus, it should show a subtotal as a 38 dot diamond, which means the running total, or the subtotal, at that time was 38. So if you want to review this, you can see Section 1 videos and or PowerPoint 1. Now let's talk about repeat addition or subtraction. To add or subtract repeated numbers, you just press the plus or the minus each time for the repeated number. So here's an example. Let's say you want to add 30, and then you want to add 30 again, and then subtract 25. Well, you only have to enter 30 once if you want, so this will save you some keystrokes. So here's how to save yourself some keystrokes by using the repeat addition. So we're going to clear it. We're going to enter 30 plus. And now instead of hitting 30 plus again, if you just hit plus, it adds the last number that you just typed, which is a 30. And then you continue normally, 25 minus, and now we're done. So we hit asterisk to print the total on our tape. And on your tape should be an answer of 35. So the repeat addition or subtraction will save you some keystrokes. Now let's talk about the add mode selector. So if you're ever adding and subtracting a series of numbers that have the same number of decimals, and that's the key point, the same number of decimals. For example, all these are currency, so they only have 2 decimals. You can use the add mode to save yourself 1 keystroke per number by not having to enter the decimal. So again, the add mode, the only purpose of it is to eliminate the need for entering the decimal each time. So it's only going to be really useful if you're adding up a long list of numbers that have the same number of decimals in them. The most common use is when you're adding dollar figures that include cents, such as accountants often do. So this can save you a lot of time if you're working in payroll. So let's try an example. So we want to add $2.36. We want to add $5. We want to add $1.25 and $3.49. But we want to save a total of 4 keystrokes. In other words, we're not going to enter the decimal. And we're going to do this by using the add mode. So the first thing we need to do is we need to tell a calculator how many decimals are in each number. So set your decimal selector to 2. And the K.A switch should be set to A for the add mode. Just remember when you're done with when you're done using this add mode, you have to switch it back to the dot, the default setting. So we're going to add these numbers, the proper sequence. We're going to hit asterisk to clear. And instead of entering 2.36, we just enter 236 plus, and then 500 plus, then 125 plus, and then 349 plus. And if you hit asterisk, it prints the total on your tape, and the answer should be 12.10. Don't forget, you have to hit asterisk at the very end of all your addition and subtraction problems. A lot of students forget to do that step. So just a reminder, the add mode selector merely makes it faster to add long lists of numbers with the same number of decimals by removing the need to enter each decimal. If the add mode selector is not used, each decimal will need to be entered. So don't forget, we are now done using the K.A switch, so set it back to the middle, which is the dot, which is the default. And in the future, you will have to enter decimals unless you decide to use the add mode. A lot of students forget and they think that they no longer have to enter the decimal, but that's only when you're using the add mode. So if you want to review this, you can go back to the Section 1 videos and or PowerPoint 1. So let's review how the decimal selector works. The decimal selector will round numbers to a pre-selected number of decimals. Now remember, this will only round the answer. It will not round the numbers that you're inputting. It only rounds the answer. So let's make sure your decimal selector is set to F for floating. This is going to maximize the number of decimals. We're going to add these two numbers, 1.24 plus 1.25. Now remember, we're no longer using the add mode, so we will be entering the decimal. So what did you get when you added those two? So here's the proper sequence. Asterisk to clear, 1.24 plus, 1.25 plus, asterisk at the very end. And obviously, since we're not rounding the answer, you should get 2.49. All right? So again, the answer was not rounded at all because we had the decimal selector set to F for floating, which maximizes the number of decimals. But this time, we're going to add the same numbers, but we're going to set the decimal selector to 1. So it's going to round to 1 decimal. So again, make sure your decimal selector is set to 1 and add those same numbers again. And don't forget to hit asterisk at the very end. So what did you get? Should be something different than the previous answer. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to clear 1.24 plus 1.25 plus, hit asterisk, otherwise it's not going to round the answer. And it's when you hit the asterisk at the end, that's when the calculator will round to the number of decimals you selected, in this case 1. And you should get an answer of 2.5. So notice two things. By having the decimal selector set to 1, the calculator rounds the answer, which was 2.49. It rounds it to 1 decimal, so the answer is now 2.5. And the other key is that the answer is not rounded until you press the asterisk the second time. So again, remember, the decimal selector only rounds the answer. So let's try some more. Set your decimal selector back to F for floating to maximize the number of decimals and add these two numbers, 1.4 plus 1.2. What do you get? Here's a proper sequence. asterisk 1.4 plus 1.2 plus asterisk at the end. And since we're not asking the calculator to round the answer, it's going to give us an answer of 2.6. So notice there's no rounding has occurred. Now this time we're going to set our decimal selector to 0. We want it to round to the 0 decimals. If these were currency numbers, by selecting 0, you're saying round to the nearest dollar. So let's add those same numbers again, 1.4 and 1.2. What do you get this time? Something different than before. So the proper sequence, asterisk, 1.4 plus, 1.2 plus, asterisk, and that's where your answer is now rounded. And you should get an answer of 3. So notice, by having the decimal selector set to 0, the calculator rounded the 2.6 answer to 3. And again, the answer is not rounded unless you press the asterisk the second time, because the calculator only rounds the answer. Now let's talk about constant multiplication. So a number that is repeated in a series of multiplication problems is called a constant factor. For example, if you're constantly multiplying your employee hourly rates by 40 hours a week, then the 40 is a constant. To multiply constantly by the same number and not have to type that same number in every time, the k.a switch will need to be set to the k for constant. This will prevent you from having to enter the constant factor each time. So now this is important. For constant multiplication, the first number you enter into the calculator is entered as the constant. As long as our k.a switch is set to k. For example, entering 800 times 200 will set the first number, 800, as the constant. So when we're doing these constant problems, like this one, we have to put the constant in the front for constant multiplication. So notice we're working with currency, so set your decimal selector to 2. And we're going to use the constant function. So make sure your k.a switch is set to k for constant. And we're going to enter the first problem normal. 3.96 times 8 equals. Now for the second problem, we're not going to enter the constant. You also don't have to enter multiplication because it will remember the last operation that you did. So for the second problem, all you have to do is enter 21 equals. And for the third problem, skip the constant, skip the multiplication, just enter 32 equals. Now on your tape, you should have these three answers: 31.68, 83.16, 126.72. And notice there's a K is printed on your tape too. So just remember the k.a switch needs to be set to K for constant for this shortcut method to work. Now if you want to review this, you can go back to the section 2 videos and or PowerPoint 2. Also in that section you'll find a constant division, which is our next topic. So the only thing that's really different about constant division from constant multiplication is it's the second number you enter is the constant. For example, if you enter this problem, 800 divided by 200, the second number, since we're doing constant division, will be the constant. So here's an example. You work in payroll, we got some annual salaries, and we're going to divide by 52 weeks in a year to see what the weekly salary is for each person. So set your decimal selector to 2 since we're using dollar figures. And again, your k.a switch, since we're using the constant function, should be set to the k for constant. And we're going to enter the first number, or the first problem, as normal. 17,220 divided by 52 equals. Okay. Now, for the second problem, we're not going to enter division, and we're not going to enter the constant, which is 52. So for the second problem, all you have to do is enter 22,140 equals. And then for the third problem, again, you skip the operator of division and you skip the constant of 52, and you're just going to enter 25,630 equals. And on your tape, you should have these three answers: 331.15, 425.77, and 492.88. And a K is printed on your tape to notify you that you are using the constant function. And again, this does not work unless you got the K.A switch set to K for constant. Now we're done using the constant function, so set your K.A back to the dot. If you want to review constant division, this is in the section 2 videos and the PowerPoint 2. And finally, let's talk about my favorite function of the calculator, memory. So calculators can store a number in a memory. The memory function can greatly increase your efficiency when using a calculator, as I'm sure you've learned this quarter. And in my opinion, of all the calculator functions, the memory function is used more often than all the others combined. Therefore, if you remember only one function when you leave this college, remember how to use memory. Now you can tell that a number has been stored in memory if there's an M appearing on the screen. Now there's some old and off-brand calculators that use an I on the screen, but most of them have the M for memory. So to add a number to memory, you just hit M+. To subtract a number from memory, you just hit M-. To see what the number is that's in memory, you hit diamond memory to recall the number that's in memory. And to clear memory, you press *M. So let's do an example. So we sold 3 items: 5 watches, 3 clock radios, 7 lamps. We want to know what the total sales are for this sale. So here's how we're going to do it. So the keystrokes are on the right in red. So the first thing we're going to do is clear memory, *M. And then for the 5 watches, just enter it as 5 times 29.95 equals M+. And if you want, you can even skip the equals. For the second problem, the 3 clock radios, it's 3 times 49.95 equals M+. And for the lamp, 7 times 59.95 equals M+. And then to see what the number is that's in memory, hit your diamond M, which is called memory recall, and you should have an answer of $719.25. And if you want to review this, you go back to the section 2 videos and PowerPoint 2, and that is it.